Welcome to the Mystic Feminine Fertility Podcast, a sacred container for heart-centered conversations about fertility, pregnancy, menstrual cycles, and divine feminine energy. My name is Annalise Yagyajoti, and I'm a fertility awareness educator, a holistic reproductive health practitioner, and a modern mystic. It is my absolute joy and pleasure to host these conversations and share them with you. Hello, and welcome back to the Mystic Feminine Fertility Podcast. Today I am joined by my dear friend Amanda. Amanda and I have worked together, we have been friends, and she has been a client of mine learning to chart in the past. So it's an absolute privilege to have her here and to get to introduce her to all of you. Amanda Lee has been fascinated by the nature of consciousness for as long as she can remember. The daughter of a philosophy professor, she grew up in a home surrounded by books about ethics, free will, world religions, neuroscience, and with dinner table conversations regularly revolving around questions like, if a tree falls in the woods and no one hears it, did it make a sound? Amanda's fascination with understanding human nature drew her to spirituality at a very young age. As she grew up, her interests led her to deeply studying acting, developing a dedicated yoga practice, explore psychedelics, and spend many years of her early adult life living out of a backpack and calling the open road her home. Amanda's fascination with the big questions was forced to become less of an intellectual pursuit and more of an exploration of consciousness within the body when she went down the rabbit hole of desperately trying to heal a myriad of chronic health conditions after being in a multi-year toxic relationship. Amanda received and studied many different healing modalities at this time, began to wake her up to her incredibly sensitive and psychic nature, seeing the biggest impact on her personal well-being through receiving somatic trauma healing. Amanda focused her own studies in this realm. Today, Amanda utilizes a variety of different modalities when offering her services as a trauma-trained somatic practitioner. She specializes in helping women heal their nervous system and attachment system after a lifetime of people-pleasing, codependent relationships, and victim-perpetrator-rescuer dynamics. In sessions, Amanda works closely with her clients' energetic body and trapped trauma imprints. Her work helps clients shift out of self-sabotaging behaviors and reconnects them with their own innate creative energy and inner knowing so that they may leave her practice trusting in their own unique magic. So good. Amanda, thanks so much for being here.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I was really honored when you asked me.
Aw. Amanda, where are you at in your menstrual cycle?
I'm on day 19.
Yes, you are.
Yes. I told Annalise before we started recording that I know now whenever we're going to hang out, I always have to check because she's going to ask me. But I'm so grateful to know because now like I've ovulated and my mood is kind of dropping, my energy is shifting and becoming more internal, and I am not anymore having that inner freak out of like, what's going on? Why is happening? Like, I know what's happening and I know how to work with it. And I actually ask all of my clients that now too.
Mm-hmm. It informs a lot.
Oh yeah.
It gives a lot of insight into what's going on for them emotionally, spiritually, energetically, hormonally. I think it's an important question to ask people.
It is. It's a very important question to ask people. It really, yeah, especially if we're like on the journey of embodiment and being more rooted in your body. I don't see how you, if you have a female reproductive system, could avoid that part of it all. But
many people do.
Many people do. I mean, it only really became a part of my life like 2019.
That's pretty recent.
Yeah, so I'm excited.
What was the shift in 2019?
Oh, man. I mean, that's a good question. I think when 2018 I went through like a pretty big trauma related to my body, as most traumas are, and that really like made me more aware of the power of my womb. And anyways, that's a whole other rabbit hole that I'm open to going down if you want to. But it was that was like the precursor, and then it was really like struggling with my health that led me to start learning more about the menstrual cycle and like working with the different seasons. Yeah.
And so what is your relationship to your cycle like today?
I love that question. I love it. Like, I love riding the waves of it and learning to harness the power of the different seasons. Actually, I have an upcoming offer about the luteal phase and like working with your intuition at that phase. So I'd love to talk with you about the power of the luteal phase. But yeah, I look forward to bleeding now. I love bleeding. It's like this portal opens up inside of you to this other realm, and it's magical. Yeah.
What are some activities that you do to harness the magic of your bleed?
That's a great question.
Or to tap into your intuitive wisdom?
Yeah. Well, I a few years ago started like actually working with my blood, so sometimes painting with it. I always collect as much of it as I can and give it back to the earth. And once I started doing that, it felt wrong to flush it down the toilet. I'm like, oh, this is such a sacred thing. Like, it holds consciousness. But like the very first day, I really just listen to my body. I clear out my schedule as much as I'm able to, and if I want to go for a walk, I go for a walk. If I want to lay on the earth with my womb touching the earth, I do that. If I want to sleep, I do that. I eat whatever I want to eat. Yeah. But I love, like, some bleeds, if I had a stressful month, I'll like want to watch TV a lot during my bleed. And then I feel like I missed this like potent opportunity to like really commune with myself. So my favorite thing when I'm bleeding is to just like be in stillness.
Yeah. And stillness, I feel like it's more comfortable on your bleed. I don't know if that's something you can relate to, but for me it feels a lot more easeful to be in stillness. Like, my body is like, yes, please slow down.
Yeah, I love how you said that. I've never thought of it like through the lens of ease, but it to me it's like when I'm bleeding, it's just like I have to honor that. Like, it doesn't matter what else is going on in town, what social events are happening. Like, I have to honor the fact that I'm shedding.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. It's more easeful. Whereas like right now, my body, I'm like entering the luteal phase, and my body's kind of like missing that high of ovulation. And so it's like I notice my system is a little bit more like revved up. Like, can we go back to that good feeling?
Yeah, I mean, both energetically and culturally, we are expected to be ovulatory all the time. We're supposed to show up external, full of energy, beautiful, just
Summertime.
open, ready, summertime, all the time. And that's how we burn out, when we're not listening to the natural cycles of our body.
100%. I mean, that's you asked me earlier, like, what led me to become more attuned to the different rhythms of my menstrual cycle, and it was burning out. And really realizing, like, oh, there's something I have to start listening to.
Yeah. I mean, how can you not burn out when you're trying to exist in a system that is not built for your hormones?
Yeah. I'm so happy that women are starting to talk about that more.
Yeah. We're trying to understand and question and just get curious. Because what we were doing isn't working.
No, it really wasn't. It was so harmful for women, and it really, I mean, I think living that way, like, A, it disconnects you from your body, but B, it disconnects you from like the power of your psychic nature as someone who has a womb. And there's, all these theories about how intentional that may have been. And, yeah, I saw this reel yesterday that said that I might be misquoting this, and also I saw it on a reel, so it might not be factual, but the reel said that it only, I think said even became legal to begin doing scientific medical testing on women's bodies in the 90s. Do you know about this?
I've heard this, and I know that, yeah, it was purposeful that women were left out of a lot of research before the 90s.
Crazy.
And, like, the 90s is not that far away, like, not that far behind us.
No.
And so, and still to these days, a lot of these, like, especially, like, diet research, like, I think of intermittent fasting a lot.
Yeah.
all of the research that's available on intermittent fasting was done on men and on postmenopausal women.
Oh my goodness.
Because they said that the menstrual cycle was too much of a variable for them to account for. But when half of the population has a menstrual cycle,
Yeah.
like, that's not an acceptable excuse.
It's really not. Yeah.
And I've seen some, intermittent fasting does work for some people, but I've seen a lot of women who, try to do it, cycling women who are, they struggle. They struggle. I don't think that it's the best diet for the cycling woman, and we would have more research on that if women were included.
Yeah, totally. I used to intermittent fast around 2019 when I was really burnt out, and I cannot believe now that I used to do that, and like with no awareness of what my body needed at that phase.
You were following the available information. I think about that a lot with myself in veganism. We talked about this. I was a hardcore vegan for a while, and at the time I thought I was doing something really just spiritually aligned. I thought it was super healthy. I thought it was all these things, and it wasn't until my body really started to scream that I was like, okay, maybe I have to change up what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so much of feminine embodiment work is learning to step out of these messages from the world around us and into the messages of our own bodies. Like, okay, blah blah said on her reel that she lost 20 pounds intermittent fasting and that she's never felt better. I gave it a try. I feel the same or worse, so I'm not going to do it anymore.
Yeah.
As an example. Or you watch the cycle. Like, before issues start to get really big in the body, they'll show up in the menstrual cycle. At Justice, where I studied, they call the menstrual cycle the canary in the coal mine. So before a large problem presents itself, you're going to see it in the cycle. Ovulation is going to get messed up, the luteal phase is going to shorten, temperatures are going to become erratic, mucus patterns are going to shift. We see all these things happen.
So interesting. Yeah. So it makes me think, like, I'm curious to ask you, if I'm allowed to ask you a question.
For sure.
What changes have shifted for you since you've learned to harness the power of your cycle?
Learning to embrace my cycle meant stepping out of societal norms. So for me, that meant I quit my job and I got off of hormonal birth control and I started to travel the world and I started to teach, and there were just so many different lifestyle changes at that time because I realized that the systems that were in place around me, they weren't working for me. And really I was out of oomph. I was out of fire to make it work for me. And this was maybe 21, 20. No, it was right when I graduated college, so 22. And I learned about the 4 phases of the menstrual cycle. And I realized, I'm not supposed to be in summer every day. I'm not ovulating every day. I didn't even know that, I knew what ovulation was, but I didn't know how short it actually was. Like, the egg is actually only available for implantation for up to 24 hours.
Crazy, huh?
It's short. The fertile phase is longer, and the energy of ovulation is a little bit longer than that, but still, it's a smaller part of the cycle. So learning to embrace my menstrual cycle meant really learning to listen to my body, deepening into intuition. And for me, that meant getting into a lot of journaling and dancing, and went to a lot of women's circles and started tracking where the moon was and just doing things that felt opening and grounding and exciting. And I found that my inner fire came back when I gave my body time to rest and explore and play. And I was still being, quote unquote, productive. I was still doing all these magical things.
Yeah.
But in such a different way, from such a different energy. I didn't wake up in the morning and say, it doesn't matter how I feel, I have to push through. I started to say, how do I feel today? And what's energetically available?
Yeah, so interesting. it's interesting because it makes me think like I very much relate to that, what you're sharing on my own journey, but for me it was so much more like I became really interested in the nervous system, and I became really interested in human design because I learned about my human design type being a projector, and it was like light bulbs. And then it wasn't until a few years later that I started to become aware of the menstrual cycle and what phase I was in. But that added like a whole other layer to it. So it's just so cool that that was like your introduction to it. I mean, I think I learned about the different phases of the menstrual cycle, like honestly, initially through a freaking Instagram post.
Yep. I believe that. I learned
crazy.
about it at a yoga teacher training.
We did not talk about that in my yoga teacher
Most
training.
yoga teacher trainings do not. Mine was just, it was all women and we were deep in the jungle. And so they said, you want to know what we should do? We should talk about the menstrual cycle.
Yeah.
And that, it changed my life. It changed the trajectory of my work, of my life, of my relationship to my body.
Where in the world were you?
Costa Rica, Puerto Viejo.
Oh my goodness, so cool. You're one of those people in my life where I'm like, I have to like pause and be like, how do I know you? Because our paths are like so interwoven, and we've traveled to a lot of the same places, so we like could have met.
We've just missed each other a lot of times in time and space.
Yeah, it's funny. And now you like teach at the yoga studio near my parents' house, which is such a trip for my mind. Yeah, that's cool though. That's super cool that, and just being in the jungle when you learn about that. The jungle has such like powerful feminine energy.
Yes.
Oh.
Destructive feminine energy. Everything will be claimed by the jungle. I showed up for that training not really knowing what I was getting myself into, but I said it's yoga, so I showed up. I bought like a full new wardrobe of Lululemon clothing.
Oh my goodness, that's so funny.
Spent so much money. I saved up for months for it. Everything molded.
Dude, the jungle.
Everything molded.
No, you gotta bring your thrift store clothes to the jungle.
But it was such a like, oh right, this isn't what yoga is actually about. It's not about wearing my designer clothes and hitting the posture. It's like, this is really about, yoga is me and my body and my breath. Yeah. And how can that be enough?
Yeah.
So I didn't need my moldy clothes. Do I wish I had been warned?
You were naked.
Yeah.
Covered in mosquito bites.
Covered in mosquito bites, ticks, all the things. But no, the jungle was so grounding, and it's very womb-like when you get into the trees. Like, it's moist, it's kind of dark, but I felt safe. I felt safe, I felt loved, I felt challenged definitely at times, but
the jungle's challenging.
Oh yeah.
For me it's challenging.
It's not easy.
Scorpions. Yeah. Oh my
Definitely
goodness.
Kali energy. And Kali, like this goddess of destruction idea, I feel like shows up in the cycle as well.
I love that you brought that up.
She shows up in the luteal phase and the menstrual phase.
Yeah. Oh, hell yeah.
And so when we're talking about the phase of the cycle, we're talking about, we start with menstruation, the first day of bleeding.
Or like the new moon.
Or the new moon. Or the maiden. And then we shift into that one's going to be winter. Then we shift into spring, the follicular phase. We start to move towards ovulation. I guess that one's the maiden. Bleeding is the crone.
The crone. I think, yeah.
So now we're in the maiden, this fresh new energy. Ovulation, our inner summer, the mother archetype. And then we move into fall, autumn, the luteal phase, the enchantress, kind of Kali energy too in there. With this destruction as we're getting ready to release the endometrial lining, and we get into the subconscious mind. The luteal phase really feels like a shifting. It's where the veil is thinning. It's a preparation. It's an ending in the menstrual cycle before the actual end. The bleeding tends to be a time of release and grounding and stillness. But the luteal phase is where everything gets stirred up. Everything gets brought into your direct eye line. And it can be a lot. And in today's world, we often call those PMS symptoms.
Yeah.
And there's 150 types or symptoms of PMS. And
they're pathologized. It's so powerful. It's so powerful.
Yeah.
The menstrual cycle to me always feels like a wave. Like the moon waxing and waning. Like you move towards ovulation and the wave goes out and then it comes back in. Ugh, I feel it in my body. But I'm curious to ask you this because you're the one who knows about the scientific aspects of all of this. I've heard that when we're in luteal phase, we're literally more, I always get the left and right hemisphere mixed up, but the more feminine hemisphere, the one that's more intuitive, more feelings based. Is that true?
That is a great question. I want to say yes, based on my experience and my understanding, but I can't say that I've looked into the literature for it.
Interesting.
But we can.
Yeah. I've heard that from a few different places.
I believe it.
I wonder if it's pseudoscience or if it's...
I think it's real.
I feel like it's real. I mean, that is how it feels. And like part of what I'm going to share in this upcoming luteal phase, like embodiment offer that I have coming up, is around how like if you start tracking your thoughts or your moods that habitually come up in your luteal phase, it will point you towards your alignment. And of course you have to ask like, okay, are my hormones actually balanced enough? Or am I just like...
Am I doing what I need to do to support my physical body?
Yeah, but if the answer to that question is yes, and you're like habitually feeling... the offer is going to be called luteal longing. Because for me, in my luteal phase, that's where like the longings of my heart really arise. And it's I think that as women we're really taught that we should shy away from our longing because it's not a comfortable energy to be in, but it's so fucking powerful. It's magnetic. It's what births life too. It's that energy of like I want this so badly, and it's never satisfied. That's like the cruelty in it in a way. It's like, but it's our, you know, like we have a womb, a void within us, and it like longs to be filled. And if you're able to really tune into that like pulse of longing and like what you are longing for, I think that it points you towards deeper alignment.
Yes. And I also believe in the luteal phase, sometimes things just come up that you've been either trying to suppress or push down, not necessarily things that should be acted on. Like something that comes up a lot for a lot of my clients is, you know, just this irritability towards their partners.
Oh yeah.
So that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to break up with your partner right away.
Yeah, right. But if you're having that come up for 7 months in a row, then it's like, let me look at this.
Yeah, let me look at the dynamics of my relationship. Let me look at what my body's trying to communicate to me. Maybe I don't need to spend every single second with my partner in my luteal phase. Maybe I need a bit more alone time then. Integration time.
Maybe there's something you need to communicate that you're not communicating.
Yeah, there's wisdom in there. And I'm curious what tools you use in this time when, because the emotion, the intensity, the longing that I hear, and that I've experienced in my own life, it's overwhelming. Especially when we start to take steps towards, PMDD, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which is like a much more severe and potentially life-threatening form of PMS. So I'm curious if there's any, not coping mechanisms, but skills that you use in your life or that you give to clients when they're navigating emotional intensity in the luteal phase.
Yeah. So I love that you brought that up because so much of the work that I do with clients is rooted in the nervous system and like emotional regulation, emotional processing, and expanding consciousness through the body, but that's kind of a different conversation. And
it can be a part of this conversation.
I mean, it's so related. but for me, it's like the more, well, where this idea for this offering came from is recognizing that with my clients, as I'm walking them through this very like long-term, in-depth process of healing their nervous systems, whenever they near their bleed and are in the luteal phase, they hit this sense of like, oh my God, this is so overwhelming, and they'll tend to disassociate or get angry or text their toxic ex. That's a big one for my clients. But the more that's why it's going to be an embodiment offer, because it's about actually moving that energy through you, especially like that longing to text your ex or that longing to have partnership again. Like that can be such an overwhelming desire for your heart, and if you don't have the capacity in your nervous system to actually like hold the energy of that and flow with it and let it like animate you, then you will collapse within it, or you'll disassociate from your body and disconnect from it. So to answer your question about like practical tools, I like to talk from the like abstract a lot. I mean, like put on a song, feel that, and let yourself be in it for even just the length of that song. And if that becomes too much and then you need to zone out for a while and watch some Netflix, like let yourself. But to me, it's like, especially in your luteal phase, if you want to have an easier bleed, like be in your body as much as you're able to. I don't know. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, you said dance it out.
That's always going to be my suggestion. Dance it out. Get on your yoga mat. Feel your body.
Yeah, spend time with yourself. And I feel the luteal phase really is a time to tap into these sensations, emotions, felt things in the body, but also to know that they will pass, that they're temporary, that this is cyclical, that oftentimes things are going to come up, cycle and cycle again.
But we're like not even raised in that paradigm.
No.
Like we are so raised in the masculine, like 24-hour hormonal cycle, but that's what the beauty
The amount of people that come to me and we start tracking, and they come to me and they're like, oh, I'm just, angry every day, or, oh, I'm just, I have crippling anxiety randomly, or I have, spotting randomly. And then we start to actually put it down on paper and we're like, it's not random.
Yeah,
Babe, it's your luteal phase. It's hormonal.
Yeah.
It's your cycle.
Yes, totally. And like the more you're able to recognize, I feel like, oh, in my luteal phase, I tend to have crippling anxiety. Then you can plan ahead of time. Like, okay, let me go to the store and buy the foods that support me, or like clear out the space in my schedule that I need to take extra good care of myself.
So you schedule a massage.
Yes. Yeah. And then it gets to become an empowering thing rather than like disempowering, like, oh my God, this sucks. I hate my body.
Yeah. So often we turn the blame internal. And with a lot of my clients, the advice that I normally give, and I'll be curious to your thoughts on this, is I tell them that when something really intense comes up, to wait before taking any action on it, and to bleed before they make any action.
100%.
Okay. Like if you want to break up with your partner, cool.
Bleed about it.
Wait until go bleed on it.
Yeah.
Or one that used to come up for me a lot was, I'd be like, I have to leave the country right now. I have to, quit my job, break up with my boyfriend, get on a plane. And so I'd start making little deals with myself, and I'd say, you know what, Annalise? If you bleed and you still feel this intense, you still want to leave the country this bad, we'll do it. Easy peasy.
Yeah.
And never did I actually bleed and still feel that level of like, I need to escape right now.
Yeah. So like through the lens of my work too, what I would probably do with like a client in that situation is look at like, what is this trapped like need to escape energy? What's that about?
What's that about? Yeah.
I have my own flavor of that, so I get it. I get the desire to leave the country and not be here.
Yeah. It's interesting, like now that I'm reflecting on it, like I had that kind of show up for maybe like a year and a half in each and every one of my luteal phases.
Interesting.
And it doesn't happen anymore.
Interesting.
I mean, I guess I did leave the country. I didn't move or implode my life. I went on a little trip.
Yeah, so that's.
But I guess that did it.
Yes, totally. Yeah, you showed yourself. Okay, I can like free that energy if it needs to be freed.
Yeah.
Without like taking it to the freaking extreme.
And I like this word of longing. I hadn't really had that in my vocabulary for the luteal phase, but no matter what the emotion is, there normally is an underlying longing.
Yeah.
We can divide PMS symptoms into 4 basic categories. The first being that of anxiety, the second being depression, the third being cravings, and then the fourth being heaviness, and headaches. So it's like A, D, C, and H are the different categories.
Yeah.
Anxiety, depression, cravings, headaches, heaviness.
That's very interesting.
But all of those I think about, and they all have an underlying longing, a desire, something, for more spaciousness, or for more excitement, or for more calm, or more support, or intimacy, or food, or grounding, or quiet, or like there's nothing that I can't connect to a longing.
Yeah, it's so the energy of fall to me too. Yeah. I don't know if you've heard this before, but something I've heard is that like in the feminine energetic system, which is very different than the masculine energetic system, like the two main, basically our energy flows from womb to heart and heart to womb. And as you're getting ready to ovulate, your energy's flowing more up from womb to heart. And then when you ovulate, it starts flowing down from heart to womb. And it's like your womb is this spaciousness, and like the nature of emptiness is desire to be filled. And so that's what I feel with it.
Yeah. I mean, it lines up too with the endocrine system.
So interesting.
With movement up and down of the hormones. Most of the menstrual cycle is a communication between the brain and the ovaries, and the heart is the halfway in between. It also links to pretty much everything that I've ever learned in yoga or breath work, of these different techniques of like how can we expand the belly with breath and then bring the breath up to the heart before we release it. And moving energy in that way. I'd love to hear more about your vision of the energy flow towards the womb and the heart.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard it referred to before as being a channel of energy, womb to heart, and that is like where the pulse of like feminine energy lies. And you can be born into, like, you can have been assigned male at birth and like still have an energetic womb space. Different, but it's this like channel of energy, and it's so like that is where the different feminine archetypes live, is like within that channel.
Like the archetypes of like maiden, mother, enchantress, those types of ones.
Yeah,
they exist within the body.
Yeah, and like specifically within different, like the gradient of that energy channel.
I love that. And how does that connect to the nervous system?
Oh, so interesting. I haven't really like, I feel like that's something that like a book could be written about. So I'm glad you asked me that, because that's a really interesting thing to muse upon. But yeah, I mean, both, like to me it's like both are huge like points of energy, and like of, to me like the womb is like pulling energy in, and the heart is more like pushing energy out. And I think that again, like it's probably going to be different in like a male body, or I feel like it's going to be different, but yeah, like it's the energy centers of like, you're catching me like stumbling on my words, because it feels so profound, but I'm definitely going to have to like chew on that.
One of the
There's
things,
a lot in there.
Oh yeah. I've been studying yoni steaming or vaginal steaming recently, where you sit on top of, a pot of herbs and hot water. And what I didn't realize previously was that it works on your nervous system, because the cervix is the grounding cord of your nervous system. So as you invite in warmth, it relaxes the muscles and relaxes the nerves, which has a full body effect. And I'm like, of course, but no one had ever said it to me. It's like how in COVID people finally started saying, oh, the uterus might be having an impact, or might be a part of the immune system. And he said, yeah, that's why everyone's having menstrual changes.
Interesting.
Like the womb it's a central part of our endocrine system, our nervous system, our immune system.
And the heart too. So
The energetic heart or the physical heart?
Well, I meant more like the physical, but both. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the cardiovascular system, yeah, because we're sharing blood that needs to be released. And yeah, but that point of the nervous system with vaginal steaming and with cervical work too, like when people are using cervical ones or exploring cervical orgasm, or just getting to know their like yoni mapping, vaginal mapping, just seeing what's in your body. It's like, yes, this is deeply nervous system work.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Have a cervical orgasm and tell me it's not like the most relaxing thing for your vagus nerve.
I don't think I've ever had one.
Really?
I've heard of them and I've explored, but I can't say that I've had a cervical orgasm with confidence.
Okay, so I get that because some people on podcasts and stuff will talk about it as like, you can't not know that you had one. And like, that's not entirely how it is for me. It's obviously not clitoral and it's obviously not G-spot, but it's like it's deeper. It's like, it feels like it's like connected to my grounding cord, as you said, like the cervix for females, like that grounding into the earth. It's like, it's just so full, like body and like deep, and if I'm gonna have like an intense emotional release too, it usually comes from there. So maybe you've had one and you just haven't been able to confidently say.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. My cervix, like, it's very sensitive. And so normally with self-pleasure, with intercourse, with exploration of the body, it's an area that I tend to with a lot of compassion, care. It's also a space that sometimes will put me back into a trauma response.
Yeah,
like
totally.
we've talked about difficulty with pap smears before.
Yeah.
With medical procedures, with previous sexual partners, with, I mean, even ancestral things can come up. But it's not, the cervix is not an area of my body that I connect with lightly.
Yeah, I totally get that.
And I love to deepen my connection with it. I love the cervix. I have so much reverence for it. And I'm continuously just like, whew.
It's intense.
There's a lot there. There's a lot there.
And it's I think it's a part of the body that's really easy for women to disassociate from.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I had 3 IUDs.
Oh, wow.
Before I discovered fertility awareness. I thought IUDs were going to be the answer. I just need to find the right one. And so there's stuff that, there's things that come up around that too, and the insertion and having that in my body, in my cervix, that, at the time, I didn't know.
Yeah.
I knew what I knew.
Totally.
I know more now. But all of that to say that the cervix is an integral part of the nervous system. And when we're talking about the nervous system too, I'm curious, how do you describe the nervous system to people? Like taking a big step back. What is the nervous system?
Okay, so, because there's like the scientific way of talking about it, but then there's the more like shamanic way of talking about it.
Do shamanic.
Oh, I was gonna say, let's keep it real simple.
Okay, keep it simple.
They'll both kind of flow together, but like in the most simple sense, it's our way of perceiving the world around us so that we are aware of where threat is. And also just like where we exist in space and time, which is a big part of our survival. Having a body, you need to be aware of where it exists in space and time. But yeah, it's our like primary means of survival. A part of the body that its primary mean is to help keep us alive. But it's also very intimately connected to our energy field and the different layers of our energy body. I feel like you can't really do energy work without also doing somatic and nervous system work. So I work a lot with like the interconnection between those 3 layers.
Do you think that in order to do spiritual work, you need to first create a sense of safety in the body and in the nervous system?
I mean, my initial instinct hearing you ask that question is like, who am I to say what needs to be done for spiritual work? But yeah, I mean, having like lived in Tulum and like all these places where people are doing all different types of plant medicine without having an awareness of their inner sense of safety. I mean, like, literally trauma can disconnect you from that sense of whether or not you are even safe. And then you're out there like seeing entities in like past lives, quote unquote, because who knows if it's a made up thing or if you're really, you know, especially if you're not like rooted in your body. Yeah, I mean, yes. I think that safety and like an internal sense of safety and the way that it opens you up to new levels of perception, I think that is a key. Yeah.
I think it's helpful for sure. I mean, I've definitely seen people who are in their spiritual quest that are struggling.
Oh my God, me for years.
Grounded or open or to feel safe. And they're still doing spiritual work.
Yeah.
But I feel like it makes it a lot harder.
I think there's so much more suffering involved when you don't have that foundation of safety within yourself, and you're questing or like philosophizing without there being a connection to like your own wounds and how they exist in your body and how they're affecting your everyday life, and the empowerment to like be with yourself within them and transmute them.
Yeah, it's powerful.
It is.
You mentioned plant medicine both here and in your bio. Can you share a little bit about how plant medicine has played a role in your life and with your womb?
Oh, yeah, I love this question. It's a big topic. I will say that for me, plant medicine reconnected me with things that I knew to be true as a kid that I disconnected from. But I will also say that plant medicine harmed me and like shot my already out aura. Like I was already pretty blown out, and it further blew me out. And it's like you can be connecting to these different spiritual realms, but it wasn't connected to my womb because it wasn't connected to my body. And now I haven't done any plant medicine really for multiple years, and I feel like I can go on a like psychedelic trip just through
meditation
or connecting with my womb when I'm bleeding. It's like I don't need that stuff, but I used to feel like I needed it.
Yeah, that's potent. Yeah, I think plant medicine is something that comes up a lot in conversation. These days there's more research coming out. People are talking about it more.
I'm so interested in the research.
Me too. I love that they're really researching it, and you know, when we look at shamanic traditions, it's been a part of pretty much every indigenous culture. At least that I'm aware of. But then there is, like, when we're working with anything super potent, there, like, it needs to be taken seriously. I think that's the biggest thing with plant medicine that concerns me, is when people are taking it kind of nonchalantly or without the proper support, guidance, or preparation.
And then they're like, let me just go back and do it again. And it's like, that's not the answer. You don't need to go see more stuff. You need to integrate what you saw before. I heard someone say once, like an indigenous shaman say, Westerners, if they do it at all, once, and then spend a lifetime integrating.
Is that for all plant medicine, or was
they
that
were
a specific
specifically
type?
talking about ayahuasca. But I could see it being applied like to multiple different things. You know, I talked in my bio about how growing up, like we would have these big, deep philosophical conversations at dinner all the time. Like if a tree falls in the woods and no one is there to hear it, did it really make a sound? Or, I mean, one of my earliest memories is of having a conversation with my dad about whether animals have a sense of I the way humans do. And, like, I could think about that my whole life and not come up with an answer. But I've always kind of had the sense that maybe some of these, like, big existential questions were introduced into my life too young for me to handle it. And I think that analogy can also be drawn with people doing plant medicine now.
Mm-hmm.
It's like
it's happening too soon in their journey.
Yeah, in their
Mm-hmm.
development,
Yeah.
and it doesn't make it a less beautiful thing. Like, I'm so grateful that I grew up in a home where I was being connected to these big questions, but also, like, developmentally at that age, is that
Mm-hmm.
what I needed? And
Yeah.
like, same with these people, like, paying thousands and thousands of dollars to go
Mm-hmm.
sit in plant medicine ceremonies. Like,
Yeah.
why are you really doing it?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if you truly feel called to it, just
Mm-hmm.
like work with an integration person after, is my opinion.
And with someone helping you with the actual experience too, I think is huge. I had so much resistance to any substance for a very long time. I come from a background in a home where there was a lot of substance abuse, and so I was like, I'm really not gonna use anything. And then I started to get introduced to plant allies, which I do consider to be plant medicine, things that aren't necessarily psychedelic in any way, but starting to work with nettle, chamomile, red raspberry leaf.
Yeah.
And then I started getting really into ceremonial cacao. And cacao was one of the first things that I really was like, oh my God, I am connected to something so much bigger than myself, because cacao bursts open the heart.
Yeah.
But it's a plant medicine. The way that it was described to me by my teacher was it opens the door to these bigger, almost psychedelic like experiences. But unlike other medicines like mushrooms or ayahuasca, those ones kind of pull you through the door. Cacao opens up the door, and you have the full autonomy to step in, to step out. Yeah. And it's such a soft, mothering, loving energy. Like, cacao is the plant that chocolate comes from. And it's really magical, really super magical. And so I worked with cacao intensively for years and years and years. And then I didn't have any psychedelic plant medicine experiences until I was living in Asheville. And I was just feeling so deeply called, and I waited for almost 2 full years looking for the right guide, because I didn't want to do it alone. I was very afraid.
Yeah.
And then I found someone, and I started my journey, and it was mixed. For sure. It wasn't the solve all, fix all solution that I was hoping it would be. But it also really opened me up to my own self-healing abilities, to the wisdom of my body, and softened me to saying, these substances, these medicines, they're not as scary as I thought they would be. That there is wisdom. And the one that I've been thinking about a lot recently, and that we've talked about a little bit, is combo, or that the frog medicine of release.
Yeah, which is not psychedelic, but it is a journey.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
This is what I've heard when we're talking about, because I think that there's so much wisdom in plant medicine when done, not even when done correctly. I don't think that there's a correct, because you're connecting to a plant source. But there is a huge potential there for assistance and support when we view these things as allies, and not necessarily like a fix-all. Like, you can't do a mushroom trip and all of your problems forever are fixed, I guess.
Yeah.
Apparently I learned.
I love, though, that you, I think I probably could have benefited from some of that, cautious slowness in my experimentation and exploration. Because for me, it's so wild to hear you say that, cacao was a medicine for you. For me, it would have been I'm drinking cacao. Especially when I was, semi-regularly using plant medicines, it's that sensation is so large that then the more subtle sensation of a cup of cacao, it's throwaway. So I think it's so beautiful that you had the reverse experience where you've slowly been. It speaks to our difference too, with you being so earthy and me being so airy.
And yet I feel like we found our way to a similar space of the potencies in our bodies. It's in our breath. It's in the womb. Like there's all these tools and practices and things that we can do and incorporate into our lives, but really the magic, the real magic, is what's within us. Is this thing that we keep calling a womb.
Yeah.
This vast expanse within us.
It's a portal.
This dark portal. What are some practices in your life that you have used to connect to your womb?
Yeah. This is actually something I've been like really deeply working with right now. So I love that you asked me this. I'm going to take a sip of water because I'm sipping your lovely cacao and it's making my mouth quite dry.
Cacao, as a wonderful plant medicine, is also quite bitter and drying.
And your girl does not need any more drying, let me tell you.
Vata over here.
Yeah, so Vata. But yeah, so I mean, a practice that I love to do that's literally so simple, but I try to do almost daily, is just put my hands over my womb when I'm meditating and like really drop my awareness down into that space and see what comes. To me, there's often this like really low like buzz or hum, and it's so like the more time I spend here, the more I'm able to tell how distinguishable it is from my mind. It's such a different frequency. And so like really hanging out down here and like then integrating that into my everyday life and kind of just like listening to that hum and the messages in it. I also really like to move from my womb. Like it's really different to do cat-cow focused on your whole spine or on your heart versus on your womb or on your pussy, and like letting that, it's just, nothing's right or wrong. It's exploration. Yeah, I like to keep it really simple because people can get, you hear like, buy my $100 course for connecting with my womb, and it can literally be as simple as just like, go sit under a tree, put your hands there, and breathe for 20 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, just the act of bringing your hands to the low belly, to the womb, like, I notice I cue that a lot in my yoga classes, and sometimes it's met with discomfort. Like, just the act of putting your own hands on your body in an act of slowing down and love.
Yeah.
Like, that alone can be so potent, powerful, and challenging.
Yeah.
Letting your awareness rest in the body, in the womb. Like, when we're normally so head-centric, like we're in our thoughts, we're in our brain, we're in the future and in the past and thinking, which is a nervous system response, right? To be in the head and not the body.
Totally, yeah.
Because you're like, if I can think my way out of this, or if I can predict all of the terrible things that could happen to me, then I can keep myself safe.
Yeah.
Learning to be in the body, breathing into the belly, into the womb, that is a learned skill.
Oh my gosh.
And so it's simple, but it also, like, I want to just validate that it can be so challenging.
Yeah.
And it shifts throughout the cycle.
It's
present.
When I'm ovulating, it's a very different experience to connect with my womb. My energy's way more heart-centered. But I love that you brought up, like, a lot of my work tends to deal with relationships because I work a lot with helping people heal their attachment systems. And so many of my clients realize through working with me that when they are out, like, interacting with their male partner or on a date with a man, that they're up in this, like, buzz energy. Or they're, like, pursuing a guy from that energy, but it's so different to be in the presence of someone you're into and, like, be embodied in your womb and in your cervix. And yeah, I just question whether, like, what is more, I don't want to say what's the more natural state for women, because I think that can be kind of, but like what, I don't know, just like, I don't think it was like this before we had technology and before we had so much stress in our lives. I think that it's like a really new phenomenon that women are so disconnected from their wombs.
Absolutely, and that disconnection is encouraged.
Yeah.
We're taught, you're tired, drink some caffeine. You're in pain, take some Advil. Keep going. And sometimes, yeah, you need to keep going, but like, you don't actually have to keep going all the time.
Yeah. I think conversations like this, though, where other women can hear women speaking about, like, oh yeah, I have this part of myself and I have this connection with it, and you can too. I just think that there's like so much power in it.
Yeah.
I'm curious to ask you too.
Yeah.
This is my own selfish curiosity, but do you, when you tune into your womb, what is your experience like?
I'm a very visual person.
Oh, interesting.
And so the way that I have felt the most connected to the womb is actually this visualization of myself in my womb.
Ooh.
And so sometimes myself doesn't always look like Annalise before you. Sometimes myself is just an orb of light or energy, but it's me in the womb. And the womb is always very dark, but comforting. It always shows up as like a dark crimson or red color, even if that's not anatomically accurate. And it's a space, like I can see myself like touching the walls of the uterus, of the endometrium, and I feel just surrounded, calm, supported, safe. It's like that feeling of being under a weighted blanket is how I feel in my womb.
I love that.
Just picturing like, yeah, what's in there, and there's always like a part of it that seems to go on forever. Like there is this swirling, I'm making a little circle with my hands. It's like this little swirling, very dark colored expanse. It's like at any point I can choose to stay in my safe womb or to step into that expanse.
Oh my goodness.
And then that's where the expanse can go many different places.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just a different sensation or color or an extension of the womb itself. But I've done a lot of work to feel at ease and safe within my body and within the womb specifically.
Yeah, I like you said, comforting. It's comforting, and that was not my experience until like maybe 2 years ago. It was, I mean, I also, like, I had a lot of trauma there. It was not comforting.
Yeah.
And the sense of emptiness, right? And that's like that, like, that emptiness is like longing to be filled in this uncomfortable way. But I love that you're like pregnant with yourself in this image. It's like, you don't need to long then because you're full of yourself.
I have never thought of it that way, of me being pregnant with myself, but that's absolutely what I just described. Like 1000%. That's what I just described.
I was imagining you like setting like the space inside of yourself for like if you ever have kids, for like it's like, okay, I'm hanging this poster here for you. You can like form next to this beautiful poster that I'm putting on my inner wall.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the walls do shift and change every month, but if there's a baby in there, then the walls don't come down, not until baby does. So I could put up some posters.
Yeah, decorate.
To make it nice, but there's something that I've come to love about the emptiness of it.
Yeah.
Because it's like that emptiness is that potential. That emptiness is the natural state of being. That emptiness feels good.
For me, I'm actually just realizing this listening to you speak, and I'm curious if you resonate with it too, but for me that constant desire to run away and travel the world has subsided significantly as I've become more comfortable with that emptiness.
Yeah. I mean,
it's still there.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I don't think it's ever going to fully go away.
The question I have people ask me a lot, or especially when I was traveling more, is they'd say, are you running towards something or away from something?
Yeah, I would think about that all the time.
And I think that, you know, whichever answer it is, or if it's anything in between or something else, because I never really felt like it was either one of those. The more comfort that you have in your own body, the less need there is to run or change.
Yeah.
You can still move in different directions, you can still shift, you can still travel, you can do all these things, but there's less of an urgency or a fear reaction with it. Because you're at home in your body and you're safe where you're at.
Yes.
So it doesn't come from a, I need to get out of here.
Yeah.
It's a, I want to experience this, or I want to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. I definitely had travels where it came from an energy of, I need to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, me too.
But then I've also had travels, my longest, most extended travel was, people would always ask me and my partner, they'd always ask us, where do you live? And his response would always be, wherever I am. And that was truly how it felt for that travel. It was just like, I wasn't running towards, I wasn't running away. It was just like, I was home wherever I was. And it was, yeah, it was so beautiful.
When I think of feminine embodiment, when I think of the work of the divine feminine, it's deeply grounded. It's the earth. It's the lower chakras. It's the womb. It's this connection to what is below, and from below, we're able to access all of these different things. I feel like so often the journey is just getting into your body and then seeing what wisdom your body has.
That is the biggest psychedelic trip.
And seeing nature as an extension of your body.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Connecting with the world around you as if it's part of you. It's a big part of yoga, and I think it's a big part of the work of the divine feminine. We often get really stuck in the mind, in thinking, or in the spiritual community. Some people get stuck in, I want to have a Kundalini awakening, or ascending. I want to reach enlightenment, as if it's something up and away that you have to. Even the ancient yogis, they're like, before Tantra, the yogis were like, we need to just meditate and ignore our bodies and we'll reach enlightenment. And then Tantra came along and was like, what if we use the body as a way to reach the divine? And that's how we have Hatha yoga. Any yoga class where you're moving the body is a tantric yoga class. Tantra has very little to do with sex. It just means that we're involving the body. And that's so just juicy and feminine. It's like,
it's so feminine.
This body that I was given, that I care for, with all of its curiosities, mysteries, and challenges, can be a pathway to the divine, to enlightenment, to living with deeper joy, curiosity, and just that feeling of like, bliss, yes. It's through the body.
It is.
Or it can be.
We come into bodies for a reason.
And sometimes it's hard. It's hard being in a body.
Oh, it
can be hard being in a womb.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're both constricting in a bit.
The physical world is not all butterflies and sunshine and love and light. It makes, and it's beautiful that our bodies have the capacity to disassociate. But I think the real juice is coming back in, because like I said, we came into bodies for a reason.
I love that. Amanda, is there anything else that you would like to share or to talk about or to reflect on in these last few moments or minutes?
I'm just so glad we did this. This was really fun. We traveled to a lot of interesting places.
We did.
Yeah, I feel so inspired to have more conversations about the womb with women. It's so good. And it's like such a private thing, but coming together and like talking about it is, it's so good. So thank you for this.
Thank you. Can you take a moment, share just a little bit more about what it is that you're offering and where people can find you?
Yeah, I would love that. Yeah, so my main offer is my one-on-one program called Reclaim Your Sovereignty. I'm redoing it right now, so I'm going to now have a 3-month, 6-month, or 9-month option. And that program is really for women who tend to lose themselves in love and who want to become like really firmly, deeply rooted in their sense of selfhood. And that work is very connected to the nervous system, and it's very like correlated to Annalise's work with the menstrual cycle. But so I work in that program with women who are in like long-term committed partnerships, and they're just trying to have more of a healthy sense of individuality. I've also worked with a lot of women who are like recently out of really toxic, traumatizing relationships. And then I've also worked with women who are dating and who just want to like not bend themselves to match the other person, but really stay firm and clear in who they are. So that's my main offer. And then, like I mentioned, I have in the middle of June, I'm going to be doing a 1-day little short workshop called Luteal Longing, and that's going to be all about the luteal phase and harnessing that power. Good. I'm so excited. And it's going to definitely be available to like purchase the recording, so you can watch it when you're in your luteal phase if you listen to this after we've already done it live. And yeah, you can find me on Instagram at amanda.dora.lee, and my website is amandadoralee.com. I'm not super active on Instagram. I'm on my newsletter though, if you want to like be the first person to hear about things, and that'll be in the show notes, I think. So
yes,
yeah, reach out to me though. You can DM me on Instagram and let me know what you took away from this. I'm very social. I love connecting with people, but I sometimes take a while to respond.
If you're bleeding or in late luteal, don't expect her to get back to you until she's in her follicular phase.
It's facts. And I'm done apologizing for it.
Yeah. No more apologies. This is how the body works, and this is how our worlds work. We're making it that way.
Yeah.
Amanda, thank you so much for your time, and thank you to everyone for listening. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode. If you enjoyed it, it would mean the absolute world to me if you'd share it with someone else that you think would like it, or leave a review. You can learn more about our guest by reading the notes below. And if you want to learn more about me, my one-on-one coaching, my memberships, or my online courses, you can learn more at mysticfemininefertility.com or Mystic Feminine Fertility on TikTok and Instagram. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.